Learning Portuguese up to this point, in particular the pronunciation and just how different the pronunciation is from English or Spanish or any other language I'm familiar with, has been humbling. It's been like having an onion that has infinite layers, so you basically just cry for eternity. So in this video, we're gonna take a little bit of a break and we're going to watch a video kind of about the Portuguese language, not so much racking my brain trying to learn this language. So here we have this video, the Portuguese language, and what makes it intriguing. Let's check it out.
So where are you from? Oh, Brazil? Es verdad? Hablo español. Ow! Hello everyone, welcome to the Lang Focus channel. My name is Paul. Today I'm going to talk about Portuguese. Portuguese is a language that far too often gets ignored. In Canada, if you tell someone you want to study Portuguese, they might say, oh, isn't that kind of like Spanish? Or worse yet, they might say, why Portuguese? Why don't you study Spanish instead? And I'm sure Portuguese speakers just love that. The truth,
I can say from firsthand experience uploading these videos and people commenting that people do not like that, and with fair reason.
Is that Portuguese is one of the world's major languages with between 215 and 220
Isn't that just the, I think that's just the wait, hold on.
million people. It is the second most widely.
Okay, no, I think that's just like the population of Brazil. Actually, how old is this video? Because there are definitely more Portuguese speakers than that. 9 years ago. Okay, population of Brazil. Just 216 million in Brazil alone. This is saying 215. Okay, so, and then the population, total number of Portuguese speakers in the world. 263.8 million, basically 264 million. Okay, yeah, population going up. So that's what I thought.
Most widely spoken Romance language after Spanish. Like Spanish, it is so widely spoken because it spread to the four corners of the globe during the.
It's even in India. There's people in China that speak Portuguese. Really? Macau? Macau was a Portuguese colony from the establishment of the first official Portuguese settlement of Macau in 1557 to its handover to China in 1999. Really? Okay, here we go. Macanese Portuguese is Portuguese dialect spoken in Macau, where Portuguese is co-official with Cantonese. Macanese Portuguese is spoken to some degree either natively or as a second language by roughly 2.3%. Okay, so that's like a significant minority of people that are speaking Portuguese there. But that's interesting. There are native Portuguese speakers on mainland China. All right, fun fact. I did not know that. Let's keep going.
Colonial period. It is the only official language in Portugal, Brazil, Mozambique, Angola,
Brazil,
Cape Verde, Guinea-Bissau, São Tomé and Príncipe, and its co-official
São Tomé. Okay.
Official in East Timor, Equatorial Guinea, and Macau. Like all Romance languages, Portuguese developed from Vulgar Latin, which was the spoken Latin used during the Roman Empire. Together with Castilian Spanish, along with Galician and a few other languages, it forms the Ibero-Romance branch of the Romance language.
Okay, wait, let's look at this, because I have heard, so Galician, which is obviously very similar to Spanish, very similar to Portuguese. I believe it's kind of like a language in the middle there, which, if you're not familiar, Galician is spoken in Galicia, which is in the complete northwest of Spain. Okay, so we're looking at a map here. This is Galicia. As you can see, it's pretty close to Portugal, but it's in Spain. And it is very similar to Portuguese. I believe that if you speak Portuguese, you can understand Galician. Mutual intelligibility is very high between Galicians and Northern Portuguese. Okay, so maybe Southern Portuguese. So if you're in Brazil, if you're Brazilian, can you understand Galician? Why don't we really quick take a look at a video of someone speaking in Galician, and then in the comments you can tell me if y'all understand it. Okay, here's a video of someone speaking in Galician. Let's check it out. And if you are Brazilian, if you are from Brazil, let me know if you can understand what this person is saying.
Boa noite, son Luis Gallego, nací en Galicia, na zona interior da provincia de Lugo. Teño 24 anos, formo parte da Armada Española, son mariñeiro. Para min o significado de estar de casa é moi complicado, xa que traballando na Armada Española, sendo mariñeiro, pois a verdade é que
it sounds very much just like Castilian Spanish to me. I mean, I imagine this person speaks Castilian Spanish, so their accent, well, I don't know. I don't want to say their accent's being influenced by Castilian Spanish, but Who knows? All right, here we go. Back to the video.
Forms the Ibero-Romance branch of the Romance language family. It's called Ibero-Romance because it's located on the Iberian Peninsula. When the Romans conquered the Iberian Peninsula, Vulgar Latin began to be spoken there, and it started to diverge gradually over time into different regional dialects. And by the 10th century, those dialects had diverged enough to be considered separate languages.
Okay, separate languages. Hold on, let's go back. Separate languages, but still, these are all very similar. My understanding, I mean, Catalan. Actually, I listen to Catalan. Speaking Spanish, I can't really understand it fully. But these are very, very similar.
Dialects had diverged enough to be considered separate languages. But Portuguese didn't exactly exist yet. Galician Portuguese, also known as Old Portuguese, existed. Galician Portuguese diverged into two separate modern languages, Galician and Portuguese, by about the 16th century, although they're still quite similar from what I hear.
Portuguese is my native language, so the easiest language to understand is Galician, about 98%. I'm from Brazil, and I find it easy to understand Galician. Okay, maybe that's the answer, but still, please let me know if you guys can understand what that dude was saying earlier.
The language received its name Portuguese in the year 1290 when the King of Portugal opened the first university in Portugal, and he decided that the language of instruction would not be Latin, but would be the Vulgar Latin, the spoken language, and he decided to call that language Portuguese. Portugal was still a relative.
Really? So Portuguese was literally just named by a king that was like, this is what we're calling it? Okay, well, according to this, it says in 1290, King Diniz created the first Portuguese university in Coimbra and decreed that the language of Portuguese would be known as the Portuguese language. They call it Portuguese. I mean, I wondered, they had to have been calling it that before I don't think this guy was like, pulled it out of thin air and was like, that's what we're calling it. Okay, whatever. Back to the video.
New kingdom at that time, and the language had never been called Portuguese yet. It was just called Vulgar Latin, and it was not yet very distinct from the Vulgar Latin spoken in Galicia. In the 1500s, when the newly developed printing press helped make Portuguese a standardized language, Portugal had already started exploring and colonizing different areas of the world, bringing their language with them.
Yeah, Portugal did a lot of that, a lot of colonizing.
The net result is this. Portuguese is spoken by around 10 million people in Portugal, but it is much more dispersed around the world. It is spoken by 205 million people in Brazil. And then of course there's Africa. In Angola, it is the native language of about 5 million people, 20% of the population, but it's also widely used as a lingua franca that unites the country's different ethnic groups. That is about 15 million more second language speakers. Cape Verde's 500,000 people speak a Portuguese-based Creole as their native language, but they learn Portuguese as a second language for official purposes. Also in Guinea-Bissau, the most common language is a Portuguese Creole, but Portuguese is also an official language with around 200,000 native speakers. In Mozambique, there are
I mean, there's a lot of places that got colonized by Portugal that speak Portuguese. I mean, we'll let this guy keep going for a little bit, but I'm interested to learn a little bit more about some of this colonization, because colonization wasn't too good for the people that were already living here on their land.
0.9 million native speakers and another 10 million who speak it as a second language. In São Tomé and Príncipe, it is spoken by another 120,000 people as a native language. In Equatorial Guinea, it was made an official language in recent years, though nobody really speaks it. I think they did that to promote their relations with other Portuguese-speaking countries in the area. And let's not forget Asia. Portuguese is a co-official language in East Timor, which was a Portuguese colony until 1970.
I mean, there's a lot of Portuguese colonies. Like, that's way more than I thought. Okay, hold on. So we got to learn about Portuguese colonization. Portuguese Empire. All right, I mean, just doing a little bit of reading here, this is a massive rabbit hole that we could go down. But Portugal was really trying to hold on tight to some of these, some of the colonies they had. Like, for example, in Angola, Portuguese army officers held the view that it would be incapable of dealing militarily with an outbreak of guerrilla warfare, and therefore that negotiation should begin with the independent movements. However, Salazar was Portugal's president of the Council of Ministers from 1932 to 1968. Essentially, and not essentially, actually, he was a dictator. He was a dictator, and dictators try to rule with an iron fist, okay? And so, of course, that makes sense then that despite his army officers telling him that they should start trying to create negotiations, Salazar publicly stated that his determination to keep the empire intact, by the end of the year, he had established 50,000 troops there. Now, obviously, the Angolan people would have tried to resist this. Okay, and unfortunately, it looks like it only ended when there was a coup, a peaceful coup, which overthrew the dictatorship. Okay, the war formally came to an end in January 1975 when the Portuguese government signed the Alvor Agreement. Interesting. Colonization, Portugal. Dictators. Not good. Let's get back to the video, because that is a rabbit hole we could go down for a very long time. So let's get back to something a little more lighthearted.
5. Nowadays, it is a co-official language again, but mostly only older people can speak it, and they are almost all second language speakers. Also in Macau, Portuguese is spoken by 0.6% of the population as a native language, and it's also spoken by some elderly people as a second language, but not so much these days. There are also the former Portuguese colonies in India, specifically Goa, Daman, and Diu. Portuguese is spoken by some people there, but the numbers are quite small these days. There are also Portuguese Creole spoken in Malacca, Malaysia, Flores, Indonesia, Batticaloa, Sri Lanka, and Aruba. If we include the second language speakers, then there are about 250 to 260 million speakers of Portuguese. That does not include the Creole languages. Portuguese is the 6th most widely spoken language in the world, and it is also the most widely spoken...
6th? 6th seems kind of low. I guess I would have thought it'd be higher. All right, most spoken languages in the world. If I can spell, oh my God. List of languages by number of native speakers. Portuguese in 6th, barely less than Bengali. According to this, 236 million Portuguese, 237 million speaking Bengali. All right, let's keep going.
Spoken language in South America, even though it's only spoken in one country there, Brazil. There are different accents.
Okay, hold on. Sorry to keep pausing, but I think that is a fact. Portuguese is the most widely spoken language in South America. As an American, as someone from the United States, that is not something I think a lot of Americans would be aware of. I digress, though.
South America, even though it's only spoken in one country there, Brazil. There are different accents and dialects of Portuguese, but the main two categories are European Portuguese, which is spoken in Portugal, and Brazilian Portuguese, which is spoken in Brazil.
It's Brazil.
Brazilian Portuguese is similar to 18th century Portuguese and also has some influences from the Indian languages and African languages of the people who were present in Brazil. I've read a lot of comments by lots of different people about this, but it seems like the difference between Brazilian and European Portuguese is basically like the difference between UK English versus American English.
Maybe. If there's one thing I've learned from people in my comments, it's that everyone has an opinion, and they're all different.
There is different accent, different pronunciation. There are some different vocabulary words and idioms, and some of the grammar is slightly different. But basically they are the same language and are intelligible. Though sometimes, depending on your exposure to the other variety of the language, you might have some trouble understanding or communicating. Which one is better to study? Well, most students of Portuguese seem to say that Brazilian Portuguese is easier to learn. And on top of that, Brazil has a huge population of over 200 million people, and
I don't know if it's easier to learn. I mean, if they're so similar and they're kind of just different in accent and slang, I don't know if you can say it's easier. Also, the difficulty of learning a language so much comes down to whatever your native language is, which if your native language is English, this video is in English, so I can assume most people watching this video speak English, then really learning any of the Romance languages is going to be, whether it's Brazilian Portuguese, Portugal Portuguese, French, Romanian, Spanish, whatever it is going to be significantly easier than trying to learn something that's much more different, like, I don't know, Polish, Russian, Bengali, Hindi, Mandarin Chinese, things like that.
Much more likely to meet Brazilians around the world than you are Portuguese people, in my experience. On top of that, Brazilian soap operas are very popular around the world, and they make people in all Portuguese-speaking countries quite familiar with Brazilian Portuguese. So, in my opinion, the best one to learn is Brazilian Portuguese, unless you have a specific plan to visit or live in Portugal. And there might be some other reasons I prefer Brazilian Portuguese, but...
I mean, just simply looking at the fact that it's like 240 million people or so in Brazil, and then like 10 million in Portugal. I mean, I would say it generally makes more sense to learn Brazilian Portuguese.
But there's no need to get into that right now. Did you know the Iberian Peninsula was under Islamic rule for several hundred years, and during that time Portugal absorbed some influence from the Arabic language, and that includes about 800 vocabulary words of Arabic origin. Something similar happened to Spanish too. There are also some Portuguese words that have made their way into the English vocabulary. For example,
Really? Okay, this will be interesting.
breeze, cashew, cobra, embarrass, flamingo, some food like marmalade, molasses, tapioca, and the insect mosquito. Like most Romance
Really? Hold on, let's go back. The word breeze? All right, so the word breeze. Where does it come from? Well, this says probably from Spanish brisa. Okay, this is Merriam-Webster. That's not Portuguese. Hold on. Maybe Spanish got it from Portuguese? Origin of breeze, first recorded in 1555 to 65. Well, I don't know. It is interesting though. I could see it. Brisa. I guess Portuguese would be brisa. Brisa? How do you say breeze? Brisa. Be brisa. Okay. A brisa. All right, let's keep going.
marmalade, molasses, tapioca, and the insect mosquito. Like most Romance languages, Portuguese has a lot of vocabulary that is recognizable to English speakers because of the French and Latin influence on English. Let's look at a Portuguese sentence and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, forgive my pronunciation here, guys. Taylor Swift é uma cantora, compositora, instrumentista, produtora musical e atriz norte-americana.
Okay, he got the W on the musical. I'm gonna try to pronounce this. We'll go back to how he had pronounced it and see who did better. Taylor Swift é uma cantora, compositora, instrumentista, produtora, musical e atriz norte-americana. So, Taylor Swift é uma cantora, compositora, Taylor Swift é uma cantora, compositora, instrumentista, produtora musical e atriz norte-americana. And then let's hear his.
Forgive my pronunciation here, guys.
You're forgiven.
Taylor Swift é uma cantora, compositora, instrumentista.
Okay, so he got the S here. It's not like he got the Z, compositora. And then he didn't do the ch here, so instrumentista.
Produtora musical e atriz
Musical.
norte-americana. So let's
Look, I feel like that wasn't too bad. I mean, obviously it didn't sound native, but neither did mine.
So if you look at all of those words and just kind of analyze each word, you can figure out the meaning of that sentence pretty easily. A lot of Portuguese sentences are like that, though they're not always that simple, but
They're definitely not always that simple.
I gave you a simple example just to show you that you can often recognize words like that. So you can probably learn to read some Portuguese fairly easily if you're an English speaker, and if you know another Romance language, then you can probably already read a lot of it without having studied the language. Of course, learning to speak it and to write it will require focus and effort.
Okay, and that's what I was saying about the eternal onion. An eternity of crying, an eternity of peeling back layers of onion.
Because that means you have to actually produce the phonology and produce the grammar, as you have to with any language. So stop thinking of Portuguese as the strange little brother of Spanish. It's actually an important global language that stands on its own.
All right, I think that's a great place to end it. Yes, it is a beautiful language that stands on its own. I'm having a lot of difficulty learning it, but I'm also still just a beginner. Also, wait, actually, before you go, please consider becoming a member of my channel. From the bottom of my heart, it would mean a lot because it would give me a lot more time to be able to make this content and to have time to learn Portuguese in a much more serious, meaningful way. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.